Hello to everyone in Sydney. I'm coming to you from Dubbo. I'm here for the year. I've made the decision to come to Dubbo for the year. I'm going to talk about my year last year with RDN and basically what they could offer you over the next year. And you can see this picture. This is us in, I think this is Walgett, which is a town about 2.5 hours northwest of Dubbo. And they've got this mural up there of a local Indigenous elder. So to start off, I'd like to acknowledge the country on which I'm broadcasting to you today, which is Wiradjuri country up here in Dubbo. I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging from this country, as well as your country where you guys are based. So, I was where you guys were a year ago. I was at Cans in the Stands, vaguely considering rural medicine. It was about in my head around maybe a 30% possibility. I'd thought about it before, but I had probably the same fears that a lot of you guys are having about, opportunities and what to do with, starting a family and all those weird worries that come into your head when you don't really know what things are about. So as a starting off point, I found Rural Doctors Network through Facebook. I think I found them through Mirage. They shared one of their posts and I decided to like the page. Through there, I found their Instagram and then their website. And their website's basically where you'll find all the information about the scholarships they offer and all the programs that I'll hopefully convince you over the next talk about what you should be joining. So the first program I was part of last year was one of their Go Rural road trips. So this was from the 25th of August to the 28th of August, which was pretty close to the year 2 human ONC but I just decided to go for it. And I think that's the message for tonight is just if you have a little inkling of a thought about whether you want to go rural, just like go for it and do the opportunities that come over to you. So here you can see a little breakdown of the types of things that we did on this road trip. And it was a pretty extensive road trip, if you can see here. We did this big loop around middle to far west New South Wales that included Dubbo and Orange and a few towns in between. And we got to see quite a wide variety of health services that are sort of offered in the rural regions. So to sort of give you a pictorial explanation of each of the places that I visited on this road trip. So the first place that we stopped off at was Mudgee, which was this brand new hospital in a fairly well-to-do regional area. It was the first hospital I've ever visited that was entirely run by GPs, but they still, because of the new ACRM program, they had GPs who had specialty training in things like obstetrics and emergency, so they could still have like a ONG department and an ED that was fully functional. It was just crazy to me. It was sort of what started to open my eyes about how rural generalism was different to regular GP work that you have in the city. From there, we went to Dubbo, where we met with the RFDS and we actually joined in and became patient actors for their mass trauma simulation. And again, there we learned that, rural generalism doesn't just need to be just a GP that happens to work in a rural town. You can have that ACRM college letters behind your name and actually go into the RFDS with it. And become a retrieval anesthetist or a retrieval doctor with them and sort of do all the fun things that you probably didn't think were possible with just GP letters behind your names. And then we finished the night in Coonamal, and there on that night we went to this very small pub. Coonamal's about a town of, I think, 4,000 or 5,000. So it was the only pub in town, and we met all the doctors, and quite a few locals were there also curious about why 30 30 medical and allied health students had descended on their very small town. So then day two, we got up early. We were still in Coonamble when we visited the Coonamble AMS. That was on my big to-do list because I'd never visited an AMS before. I don't think USyd is really great with hooking people up with AMSs. I guess there's not many around the Sydney Centre. So it was great to go there, and there we met a different type of rural doctor, which was a rural GP who was really in, GP land. And then, when you're on this road trip, you get to ask all the questions that's been bugging you for years about, what they intend to do with family and what their training pathway was and whether they feel like they're limited and, the community connections and how, scary it is to interact with things like Indigenous people if you're not from that background. So I found it really great to sort of get the chance to ask that and see how an AMS runs. From there, we went to Walgett, which is 2.5 hours north of Dubbo, and that's this photo here and this photo here. So Walgett's a town that was the first one where I went to where I was like, this is truly rural. They had, issues with fresh water supply. They had I think it was a 25 or 30% Indigenous population, which is much more than the city of Sydney. They had mass unemployment and mass housing issues. It was sort of like the issues that you see through the news that you think could only happen in a third world country and shouldn't be happening in the backyard of Australia. It was interesting there to talk to at their own AMS about the ongoing tensions between white and Indigenous Australians and how that was sort of amplified in certain small country towns. From there, we went to Bararana, which again was eye-opening in a different way. We sort of went there and it was sort of a ghost town, but in an eerie way. I think they had alcohol lockout laws, but it was the experience itself was good, and we went to this the fish traps, which I think they said was the oldest man-made structure still remaining, as in that hasn't collapsed, which was insightful. And there we got to again talk to an Indigenous elder about how they viewed their community and how moving forward and health issues affecting them. We ended the night in Ningen, which is a town, I think that one's slightly southwest of Dubbo. And we got to talk to, I think, the mayor of Ningen and some of their committee. So then on day three, we went to Trundle, which was the smallest hospital that we visited on our road trip. It had a 2-bed ED and I think 20 beds total, and it was run by there was a transition period, but previously just run by an entire hospital run by a man and his wife, and now transitioning to a different man and his wife. And this was also definitively the smallest town we went to. Again, different. Every rural town is different, and it was great to see the wide breadth that each different town can offer. From Trundle, we went to Parkes, which was similar to Mudgee in that it was a brand new hospital in a more affluent rural part of New South Wales. But again, it just goes to show that, every rural town is different. We ended up the night in Orange with a nice this was our last night before going home tomorrow. So we had a nice dinner together and we all went to the winery together. I think another part of the road trip that is great is that you just meet a lot of like-minded medical and allied health students, and you guys can sort of, because you feel sort of isolated in UCID, I found, in that a lot of people want to do a lot of amazing metropolitan-based things like surgery and, you know, physician. They want to get onto the BPT, and it's very hard to find like-minded people who want to also get into rural medicine. So it was great to meet and maintain these connections with these people. So on day 4, we visited Orange Hospital before coming home. Orange Hospital is a lovely hospital. Would encourage everyone to visit if you can. I'm biased. I still think Dubbo is better, hence why I picked Dubbo over Orange. But Orange is a close second. And here's a little picture of our bus. So that was the first thing I did last year, which was with RDN, which was in August. And it was through that road trip where Chris actually told us about the outreach student placement program. So I applied for that too. Here I've just got an image of their website, just showing that all these opportunities can be found through their website. So the first placement I did with this was in October. And it was in a little coastal town south of Sydney, Narooma. I was there for half a day with a vascular surgeon at his clinic. Again, it was different in that previously we'd been looking at GPs and how GPs work in rural towns. But now I got to see how specialists came in, particularly how rural towns are more primarily serviced by fly-in, fly-out specialists, and how that impacted the healthcare of local residents. And, you know, they'd come to see the specialists in Narooma, which would be like the next town over from where they lived. But if they actually wanted the surgery, they'd have to drive all the way to Canberra, which is where this guy was based. Because that one was only for half a day, RDN very generously offered a second outreach placement in for which I opted for Coffs Harbour, and that was with a neurologist. One thing I didn't mention at the start of all this, but is that if you apply for the Go Rural trip or any of these outreach placements, it's all free, it's all paid for. You've got accommodation, you get food, and that's for the road trip. And then for these outreach placements, they even pay for your travel expenses there. So for Narooma, I drove. And for Coffs Harbour, because I didn't have a car for that one, they actually paid for me to fly over to Coffs Harbour. So that was a 2-day experience. Again, great to see how specialists treat local residents in a smaller town. Finally, for anyone in the audience who's a second-year medical student, I'd encourage having a look at the cadetship, which is what I currently have, and part of the reason why I'm giving the talk tonight. I'm sure Chris will talk to you more about it, but it's not just, you know, doing it for the money sort of, but it's also like you get a lot of backing, you get like mentors to help you, you know, think about what rural pathway you want to jump onto. It really is a lot more than I thought it would be, which is leading into my parting message. So my parting message would be, if you're even just a little bit interested or curious about rural medicine, give it a go. It's so much different to what I would thought it was, and I'm so glad that I got to go out and talk to rural doctors and meet people at all stages, whether they're rural interns or, you know, that rural doctor who's just about to retire. It was great to talk to these people and actually discuss all the misconceptions that I thought and actually learn a lot more than I was expecting to. And I've, you know, after going on all these trips, I've pretty much committed 100% to rural medicine. It's just been, yeah, it's been the bee's knees, and I'd encourage you to just jump onto it.
I'll introduce Josh. currently in town, who's just spent his last couple of years in Dublin, and he's going to have a chat here about disclaimer. So yeah, my name's up at RBA, but I did my third work here from UCID out in Dublin. So I grew up in Newcastle, place called Maitland, and moved down for undergrad in Sydney, stayed here, changed degrees and switched into med, and didn't know a lot of what was happening in undergrad, very confused about what the entire process was, what I got myself into, and just happy to be done with the GAM stuff really. But I did know a few friends that were years above me in medicine, and I asked their advice of things to do. So I had 5 friends, and 4 of them happened to have gone to Dubbo, and the advice from all of them was do it, go to Dubbo. It was the best decision I made in medicine. To be fair, 2 of them also said that about med review, so maybe they're just really enthusiastic people, but I don't regret either of those decisions. They were both fantastic decisions in my medical career. So I applied for Dubbo in second year at the height of COVID here, which was a little bit nerve-wracking because we just made all these friends in first year medicine, and then COVID had come and locked everything down, and I was there kind of racked with doubt going, is this social suicide? Am I moving away from everyone I know in medicine to a place where I'm not applying with anyone else, I'm going by myself, I have no idea who else is applying at the same time as me. What am I getting myself into? But I trust the people who said do it. So I applied, I moved out to Dubbo. I was originally only going for third year. So I decided I wanted to do 1 year in Dubbo, see what rural medicine was like, and then come back to the city and compare it to city medicine. I ended up going out there and loving it so much for a few reasons I'll talk about in a moment, that when an opening came up to stay for another year, I decided to stay and do 4th year out in Dubbo as well. I've clearly come back to the city now, and I'll talk about my reasons behind that later. But just a little bit about the rural experience and the rural medicine experience and what the biggest takeaways for me were. So I think the most important thing about rural medicine is just the culture you get into in the hospital. The exposure you get and the friendships you make, like genuine friendships you make with other people in the hospital, regardless of level, is incredibly valuable. So my experience as a student in Dubbo is I got integrated into the teams and got to socialize, I got to make friends, I got to interact at work in ways with other professionals in the hospital that people in the city just didn't get an opportunity to. I got to spend social time with interns, residents, registrars, ATs, consultants, allied health, nursing, physios, everyone, and get their perspective on lots of aspects of medical training, and also their input onto things that could be improved, and input onto things that I could change in how I'm approaching medicine, which was incredibly valuable, but also creates this really strong network for you that is solidified through the fact that you work so closely with these people. Since coming back to RBA, lots of the doctors from RBA rotate out through Dubbo, and so just by happenstance, I've had about 6 different people on my teams that I've met in Dubbo, being firm friends with in Dubbo outside of medicine, who can then provide me support and advice that would potentially be more awkward if I didn't have that pre-existing relationship, and that people in the city just don't get because of the way the teams are structured between those 2 places. So that's really important for that, and also really important for just stupid questions that you have all the time, because nobody knows what's coming next in medicine. It's so mysterious at every step. I'm sure some of you guys are feeling this moving into clinical years and just going, what the hell do I actually do when I rock up at the hospital? Like, how do I ward around? What do I dress with? And you'll have those questions all the way through. How do I apply for internship? What's important? Where are good places? What's this process like? And that process is so simplified when you've got friends from the year above that you've met through rural rotations. The second biggest thing to me is medical exposure that you get in a rural setting. So I think that the medical exposure you get is second to none in 2 different ways. One is you get a general exposure to a whole lot of things. So you will see how all of the basics are managed, which is what you as an intern will need to be doing, is managing the basics across a wide range of diseases. And that's something that's done in rural medicine where they have general medical teams, things like that. It's something that's done less in the city where they have hyper-specialized teams. So while I was on general medical placements and managing every general condition, I had friends who were on placements in large city hospitals who were on the restrictive lung disease respiratory. They didn't manage diabetes, they didn't manage AF, they didn't manage even asthma, other lung diseases. Their job was restrictive lung diseases for 4 weeks, which is great. They definitely know more about restrictive lung diseases than me. But as a junior, if you can't handle, if you've never seen how the basics are managed across a wide range of things, that's a really large impact on you. The second part, especially in Dubbo, is that they run a ton of sims. We had about 3 sims a week on critical care scenarios. And that level of exposure is incredible when you move into an intern world. And they run sims with us in orientation week. And for some people, that was their third sim they'd ever done during medical school, was the ones that were run in orientation week. So the level of exposure you get in those rural places around things like that is truly fantastic. The last point about moving rural is just the lifestyle outside of medicine that it affords, which is, I think, really fantastic. Like, number one, the living costs are lower, which doesn't sound like the biggest thing, but makes a huge difference. So for me, the fact that I didn't have to work as much during medical school meant that I could focus on other aspects of my life. I had more time to do, I could fit in my studies, my placement, and have a normal life, and not have that normal life replaced with, oh, actually, I also need to work 24 hours a week just to be able to afford rent in Camperdown. Aspects like that, aspects like the commute, like, you can't find a house in Dubbo that's more than a 10-minute drive from the hospital. It doesn't exist. So the rent you need to pay for a place that's 10 minutes from the hospital is significantly less than in Sydney, where you're looking in Camperdown, Newtown, Glebe. That's about it. So good luck finding a place under 1,400 a week, split between people. Given all of those positives, I guess the last question is, why did I move back to Sydney? And that's just because, well, I think Dubbo and rural places in general have this really great general exposure. I wasn't aware of the hyper-specific things that were out there. So I wanted to be exposed to what these subspecialties were that were available. So I think if you're looking to be a low-gravity neurosurgeon, spoiler alert, it doesn't exist in Dubbo. So if your heart is set on something incredibly subspecialized like that, you're not going to get exposed to it in a rural setting, and you're not going to make contacts around that in a rural setting. If I wanted to come back to the city to see what was available in terms of subspecialties, if I move back rural as a consultant and am referring patients to the city, so that I know what's available, I know the experience they're going to get when they get transferred in.
My name's Katie. I did my undergrad in medicine, so hello to any allied health nursing students in the room that want to be here, or we all need. So after doing nuclear medicine, I worked in Dubbo for a while and then applied to medicine, came here, like I met with you, did the first couple of years here. Then I did third year in Orange and fourth year in Dubbo, and I did my internship and residency in Orange, and now I'm a surgical SRMO based at PAL, and I'm currently doing a paediatric surgery rotation at Sydney Kids, which is great. This is a presentation I actually did in 2018 when I was part of Mirage at this very event. The picture slides I had for today, I forgot, sorry. But I guess a little bit about, I guess the boys have done a really good job in explaining some of the pros and experiences that they've had, and I won't add too much more to that. In that, I think particularly Josh, you've done a really good job at sort of highlighting some of the really great things about rural health. I guess from my perspective, I've had lots of opportunities to do really great placements, and I didn't have the opportunity to do the bush bursary, but I think if I had, I would have loved it. Instead, I did this program, which doesn't exist, unfortunately, anymore, called the John Flynn Placement, which was in South Australia. And some of you guys during your elective programs might be able to consider a remote placement. I also had the opportunity to be an RDN cadet in my final 2 years, which was really great. It allowed me the opportunity to network, meet lots of really great people who were doing a vast array of different careers. And I just found the support from Rural Doctors Network really helpful in some really difficult times towards the end of my degree and in trying to figure out, well, what could I do and what could I be? I don't know if this will autoplay, but yeah, this is just my presentation from a few years ago. As you can see, I had the opportunity to be with a rural generalist who also had anaesthetics training in a place in remote South Australia. He had his own plane and we'd fly to different hospitals to do anaesthetic lists, and then we do his general practice in his solo practice in Woodena, and he was the only GP for about 200 kilometres around. And this program was great because we go back every year for 2 weeks every year for 3 years. So I really got to meet him and his family and the community. We got to fly lots of places. I would like to say the pilot did not have beers, just me. And there's some Salt Lakes, which is in that top picture, and they have a racing event every year in January in South Australia. And the doctor and his mates, they were the fiery and doctor at the races, and they also had their own racing car. So that was really fun. And I got to travel around a lot, and they gave me a car, which meant every weekend I went somewhere different. Anyways, that was that presentation. I guess there's a lot of fears around when you're moving on to that next stage of your career as to whether a rural internship and residency is a great idea, especially in terms of networking and skills, and whether you'd be able to get into a competitive program afterwards if you were interested in specialising in something where you had to train in Sydney for. And then in terms of nursing and allied health, new grad years, I think what Josh said around the general exposure to things, the fact that you build really good relationships with your consultants, which means really good references, the fact you get really great breadth of general knowledge. During my internship in residency, I did a term in vascular at Westmead Hospital, and it was a surprise to me that my senior resident had never put a catheter in. Meanwhile, I'd been doing them since like probably a third week in the internship. Or that a lot of people had never put an NG in because there's a nurse that does NG. Or had never had, even though they'd done an ICU term as a resident, they'd never done an art line. While on my ICU term, I did at least 40 or 50 art lines. I have friends that have done anaesthetic terms as a resident, and in many hospitals in metropolitan areas, that's just not available. Or there's only 4 or 5, and there's, you know, people applying for the second term. I think I was the only person interested in surgery in my intern cohort out of 20 people, and that did make things sometimes a bit difficult, but also gave me the opportunity to get into theatre a lot, to build good relationships with the bosses, and to get the job that I have now. And I certainly don't think it put me at a disadvantage. And I really have enjoyed my time, and I'm hoping that I can work as a regional general surgeon in the future. But I encourage all of you to do rural placements if you get the opportunities. My time in Orange and Dubbo were the best of my degree. Lots of, I guess, really good times, good memories living in shared accommodation, wineries, and lots of social events. And yeah, I just encourage you guys to go ahead with it. Any questions, feel free to ask me during dinner. I don't want to take up too much more of your time or put you guys to sleep, but if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask, including about like nursing and allied health stuff too, because some of my friends at Orange were new grads from Sydney. They've never worked in a rural place or done placement in a rural place, and they have also had an incredible time. Thank you.
I've already spoken a little bit about RDM, who we are, and what we do. We've got a whole range of different scholarships, programs, grants, etc. And I'll just run you through them quickly. Some of them we've already talked about, some of them we haven't really in too much detail. Look, we are sort of, I guess, oversubscribed for most of the scholarships, but my job, and Ella, who I've introduced actually, Ella from RDM, also at the front here, our job is to find people that might have a bit of an interest in rural medicine, rural nursing, and to then just kind of do what we can to support you getting there. So if that's, you know, coming out and go rural as Alex did, he went away from that. It wasn't that we went out chasing him to say, right, Alex, now you can't go rural, you have to come here and do this. It's Alex went away, and out of the 20 people on that bus, he came back and said, I really like that. Is there anything else we can do? And I said, yeah, brilliant. Okay, what about send you out on an outreach trip? So, like, what we want is to just put these things out in front of you to make the decision whether you fancy this or not. And you know, hopefully you're sitting there thinking you might tonight. The Go Rural trip. So that's the bus trip that Alex spoke about. We do 4 of these each year. So we're doing 4 in 2023. We've got one that's going to be happening from the 27th to the 30th of April in the Mirage region. So our applications, as you can see, they're going to open on the 13th of March, which is coming up pretty soon, and you're all eligible. So be a group of first and second year medical nursing and allied health students who will take out on that trip. It's a 4-day road trip, and on this particular trip in Mirage, we'll be going to Crookwell, Temora, Deniliquin, Griffith, Wagga Wagga, back to Sydney over 4 days. So the idea is that we give you a chance to see like a regional sized town, rural sized town, and a remote sized community. So it's sort of giving you an idea of all of those. So a hospital like Wagga Wagga is actually really quite big. There's lots of different specialties in there, and there's lots going on. It's brand new, it's fantastic, and Wagga's got, you know, it's quite a big town, like 50+ coffee shops, lots of, you know, fun things to do, and it's the same in all, you know. So we try and show you that sort of size places in somewhere more like Temora, which is a little bit smaller, but again, try and show you what life is like in each of those communities. We do have a big focus on all of the trips on Aboriginal health and our Aboriginal communities in New South Wales. Alex mentioned AMSs, so that's Aboriginal Medical Services. So we will spend at least two of the days or a couple of visits in Aboriginal Medical Services across New South Wales, which is a pretty special sort of in summer next year when it's particularly nice down there. So that's the Go Rural trips. Outreach. So again, we've touched on outreach. The basic premise of outreach is it's sending out specialists, talking about medicine, sending out a specialist that might be based in Sydney, like an ophthalmologist that flies out to somewhere like Moree, on a tiny little RFDS plane, which is really fun, sexy, unless it's really windy, in which case it's not so fun. So you get to fly out to Moree and you deliver a clinic there like once every 3 weeks or something like that. So rather than a local where you go once and then go back, it's an ongoing service. So there's a gap in a service gap in a community, and you get, but the community can sustain a full-time ophthalmologist, so you fly in, fly out. So the numbers are from a few years ago because it's funded by the Department of Health. I don't like to put up the current numbers of what it looks like, but there's like over 1,200 outreach services, which is 18,500 clinics and 206,000 patient occasions of service. So it's a huge program that we run all across New South Wales, and you've got the chance as a student to shadow these specialists. As Alex said, we cover all of your costs in terms of going out, and these are the places that we go to. So a lot of these clinics and everything take place again in our Aboriginal communities. A lot of them are run out of Aboriginal Medical Services across New South Wales. And again, brilliant opportunity for you. We put you through some cultural awareness training before you go, and make sure that you're well connected and well aware of the place that you're going to and what the culture is like. So, look, fantastic opportunities to get out there. I think it's a really great chance for you guys, as medical nursing and allied health students are all eligible. Chance to get out there, shadow a specialist. You can, get to see a community. You get to see what, what outreach looks like as a possible career option down the track. I decided to just chuck this up there, so ignore the top line. That's a year out of date, sorry. That's, yeah, typo on my part. But this was a list of what we had last year, so I just wanted to show it to you to give you a bit of an idea. So if you can't see that up the back, you've got geriatricians, psychiatrists, rheumatologists, palliative care, psychiatry, dermatologists, neurologists, midwives, GPs, diabetes educators. Some of the people that went out of these trips, some of the best experiences were with allied health, so like with a dietitian or diabetes educator. So have a think about those opportunities. Anyway, so that's what we had last year. You can apply through the website again. So all our applications are through the website. We promote everything via social media, so it's worth following us on Instagram. We just promote when applications are opening, closing, and we'll promote them all through the guys here at Mirage too. So outreach will be opening maybe in the next week or so. Depends how hard Ella works in the next week or so to get that out. All right, 2 weeks. Yeah, so we'll open up the way that it works. We put all of the opportunities up on the website for you, so you can see the dates of the clinics, where we're going, and so you can have a look at what your timetable looks like, and then you apply. You preference your top 3 placements. You submit a 1-minute video telling us why you want to go, which is amusing for us, and then if you're successful, we send you out. We do that twice a year, so we send putting those up a couple of times a year. Push bus rate very quickly is a one-off 2-week placement. So these placements, we run them usually during this sort of summer break. So again, you're eligible as a first or second year medical or nursing student at UCID. These are funded by rural councils. So councils come to us, they give us $3,000 and we give $1,500 to a medical student, $1,500 to a nursing student. We send you all out into the rural community that the council has given us money for. We set that up for you though. We make sure that you're accommodated, that you there's going to be, you'll spend time with the doctors, nurses, allied health, spend time out on a farm. It's about rural immersion though. So if you're thinking that this might be a good chance to get a little leg up with your clinical skills and get to do some fun stuff, but you're not really that interested in being out in a rural place, probably not the one for you. This is rural immersion. The idea is that it gives you a chance to have a look at what a rural community looks like and how healthcare comes together in that community. So, and it's important to us because obviously they're funded by councils. The place that you'll go to, that you'll find that the community will really get around you. Like Katie was talking roughly about her experience where, the GPs are going to be super excited to have you there. The mayor will probably come take you out for lunch or something like that. They're going to be really keen and really excited to have you there.
The mayor called me last year and said, "Are you interested in being a GP? Because we'd really like you to come back and work here. How far are you in your training?" That kind of vibe.
I think every go rural trip, the mayor of somewhere will come and have. So you'll be greeted. So we're looking for people that are keen. You don't have to have any rural experience. That doesn't matter. We just want people that are keen and ready to get out there, have a look, just get in amongst it. So these applications open a bit later in the year, usually around about June, and yeah, it's a bit more of an intense process for this one. So you apply, you go through an interview process. So we interview you all because we want to make sure that you're the right fit for the program, and then yeah, we send you out over summer. Good opportunity. The last one I'll talk about are the cadetships. So both Alex and Katie have talked about cadetships. So cadetship, you receive $15,000 per year for your last 2 years of university, and then you're essentially bonded to spend 2 of your first 3 years in one of those 5 hospitals plus Broken Hill. So you're at Tamworth, Double, Orange, Wagga Wagga, or Albury, or Broken Hill. So we've got 48 cadetships available for the next few years. It used to be 14. gains. It's gone up quite considerably. That's as a result of the rural health inquiry. So the state government funds this programme and is committed to giving more spots to get. We're really looking for people here at this point that are starting to get really serious about rural medicine and want to work regionally or rurally longer term. So again, there's no strings attached to this. There's nothing that we're not got up there that's that's a part of it. You have to spend 2 years in one of those hospitals. There's a couple of conferences that we fund you to come to each year. We pay you on time, right? We lot of mentoring opportunities. You get a relocation allowance. So if you're moving from Sydney to Albury or whatever it is, we give you a relocation allowance to get your things there, all that sort of stuff. So look, it's a really good opportunity. You would apply in second year, so at the University of Sydney, unless you're of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent, then you can apply in first year. Still get $30,000 total, but it's spread out. If you are a part of the bonded medical program, you can definitely apply for the cadetship. As I said, same cadetship for Indigenous medical students, you can apply a year earlier. And we've got a really good, now strong cohort of Indigenous medical students and doctors that have gone through the cadetship over the years. So yeah, we'd love to see some applications. Applications for this one usually open June, close around August, so it's a bit late in the year. So yeah, again, we'll be hanging around, so come up and ask us questions. We usually get about 75 to 85 applications a year for what will be 48 spots. I think sometimes people from maybe metropolitan backgrounds think they're not going to get a cadetship because they're not from a rural background. That's not true. If you're genuine in what you want to do and really are really interested in practicing regionally or rurally, then definitely encourage you to apply. So yeah, that's the cadetship. I think we're just about done. The one thing I wanted to mention is conferences. So RDN runs a couple of conferences, but later in the year, so in November this year, remember that, or remember my overhead later in the year when you see an advert for this. So we partner with, or last year, first time we partnered with the Australian Medical Students Association, the National Rural Health Student Network, the Regional Training Hubs, and the Rural Doctors Association of New South Wales. And we put on a medical student conference. So it was in Coogee. I think it cost $50, and we had 70 medical students from across New South Wales came to that event. We had RFDS came. They ran about 7 sessions, which was really cool. We had 5 or 6 doctors and nurses from RFDS. They answered questions and chatted a bit about life with RFDS, that sort of thing. But people like Katie who came and spoke about being a junior doctor in a regional hospital. We had our panel of different specialists, so people who were on different specialty training programs that were working in regional hospitals. We had a group that were currently going through rural generalist GP training, so things like that. So anyway, it's really good. Get cover your lunch and all that sort of stuff. And I think we gave you a couple of drinks, cocktails in the end. So your $50 was sort of reasonable. So keep an eye out for that one. It's a good chance to network and get to meet other like-minded students and that sort of stuff. All right, so you've heard a little bit from each of us and some of their experiences, I guess. I live in Orange, so when we're very happy to answer questions, but I'm assuming most of your questions are George and Katie. So yeah, this is a good opportunity to ask a couple of current doctors what it's all about. So has anyone got any questions to kick it off? Oh yeah.
People who did 4 years rural, but just like coming back to the city, regular internship.
Sorry. Answer first because I've just arrived back. So it's definitely a transition. It's a really different hospital culture, hospital setting, especially having done third and fourth year there. The most daunting part for me is going to a hospital where I essentially knew every person in the hospital to a hospital where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to know them. Helped a lot, but it turned out I actually did know a bunch of people who rotated to cover. But it's a very different style of medicine that gets practiced as well, because you go from this general medical setting where a team will manage a whole bunch of different medical issues to a setting that involves quite a lot of consults. Essentially, just this patient's got difficult to control diabetes, that's a consult. This patient's got difficult to control AF, that's a consult. This patient's got difficult to control rest issues, that's a consult. So that was certainly a change, and fitting into a new team structure that essentially has a whole bunch of people between you as the intern and consultant. Just you have a whole bunch of different levels that just aren't present in a rural setting. So that part certainly changed, and that kind of daily flow. Obviously, the base medicine that you're expected to handle as an intern, that actually doesn't change that much. Your job is still very similar to what it is in a rural setting. If anything, you have a bit of a reduction in scope of practice because there's so many other people around that you're not relied on to solve as many problems as you would be in a rural setting. So having had that exposure as a medical student in a rural setting, and having had the opportunity in a bunch of those teams in a rural setting to essentially step up and sit in a kind of semi-intern position, I think positioned me really well for a lot of the first few days of the internship, where I could just be like, yeah, actually, this process is different in some market ways, but it's essentially the same. That's what I was doing as a medical student in Dublin, except that I wasn't able to leave at 2 p.m. and go do whatever I wanted afterwards. It was contracted till 5. I had to do boring jobs as well as the less boring jobs. But I think that part's actually really well. And I think that rural exposure, especially Dublin highly prioritizing critical care sickness, has been really useful for after-hour shifts, and just feeling confident that the main thing I can do is identify a sick patient, know what needs to be done, when it needs to be escalated, and how I can try and make this person not die until someone else can get there. And having had the amount of exposure I've had in Dubbo to how that's run, to how that's run since, has really helped for the first few times that's happened as a junior, and all of a sudden you've got board nurses, new grads around you, and the patient's family around you. They're going, is everything going to be okay? And you're just there, so I'm going, at least you've had the exposure to lots of those scenarios, and you can go, I can make common sense decisions. I see these common sense decisions being made, and then I can call someone, I've made consults before, I'm not improving this. So, long answer, but essentially boils down to, I think it helped a lot to have that exposure to a kind of semi-intern role in rural setting. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not allowed to answer questions first. But I would say, as a JMO, working in a rural area and having the students, I definitely, and then working as doing a term at Westmead and having medical students, I definitely, I guess the medical students that I had in Orange were able to do more procedural stuff, and we learned from them a little bit. We also sent them home very early this morning. But they had, I guess, a lot more opportunities to do things and be a valued member of the team. And then the aims that we had as well, which some of you might be aware of, medicine, was the thing they sort of brought up during COVID, where you can be paid and work and do some basic kind of intern jobs towards the end of the degree. Yeah, I guess the role in Orange compared to Westmead is definitely more like internship.
I actually had to have someone explain that main role to me 5 times because I was just sitting there going, this is what we do as medical students. Like, can you step me through again how this is different from what I'm meant to be doing on my placements? Oh, but it's like you get to do procedural stuff, and you'll take ward round notes, and you might get to write some discharge summaries. And I'm like, yes. What are the rest of you doing during the days that you have placement? Like, what's different about this?
Yeah, I think your opportunities as a medical student intern third and fourth year are very general. You get to do a lot more, and certainly as a general, I definitely leaned on my medical students and really appreciated them. And I hope they have some excellent learning opportunities as well.
All right.
Yeah, so yeah, but first, what would you say it's like trying to do like say and also
Yeah, great question. So really all the BPT programs obviously offer regional and rural, mainly regional. So in terms of my friends who are now BPT here in Sydney, or RPA, one at North Shore, who were all from Dubbo into their final year and their internship residency at Dubbo, they've all been very well connected, and pretty much every hospital offers BPT, which is a BPT training program that have rural sites that they rotate to. I certainly know that, for instance, in Orange, we had a couple who wanted to do BPT and they wanted to practice in Victoria, and one of them had an interest in cardiology and the other one had an interest in renal medicine. And the cardiology boss in Orange called someone at the preferred places in Victoria and said, you should interview these people, they would be excellent candidates. And so the references that you gain and the exposure that you gain in a rural area certainly is a disadvantage, and the fact that you have such close relationships with your bosses really benefits you in the long run. They will call and say, I have someone that wants this job. Like, will you please at least interview them?
Yeah, I think that connection to the consultants is really important, that they will see your work at a much closer scale because, as I said before, there's less people between the consultant. So even as a medical student, the fact that consultants knew my name and could approach me in the community is something that doesn't happen in Sydney because there's 8 different people between the consultant and the medical student. In terms of BPT and search training positions, as far as I'm aware, there's none of those programs where you can do that 100% outside of Sydney, except for Spike that you can stay in Orange for. So it does involve some time back in Sydney, which is just so that you can see that specialised version of medicine that happens in Sydney hospitals. But all of those programs, as far as I'm aware, require a rotation to a more minor hospital, at least something like Bankstown. So I know RPA rotates to Bankstown, our main council for the BPT program, but they rotate their students. Dubbo, somewhere up north, Coxel, or Mac. I don't think it's upwards. But so definitely you get those rotations as BPTs into those rural communities, so that you can see that different styles happens out there. And so for instance, before people who've done BPT training programs through RPA, same thing happened where the consultants that had their own then called up the people that do the selection for RPA training programs and essentially said, these 4 people should get in. And those 4 people did get a spot in the end.
They had to self, like they obviously had to work hard and build more resume and work in. But I think having good references on your resume and people who are willing to put the word out for you is really important.
As well, having just stop me having run the leadership now 6 years doing that, we've had people go down all sorts of different specialty pathways. And not one person has said to me that the fact that they did a regional internship on these 5 hospitals across the world, that it's held them back anyway. But just had someone, Matt Wilson, who is just going into PDY5, so he graduated 4 years ago from Adelaide. He's originally from Tamworth. He did his internship in residency in Tamworth. He got a job at the Eye Hospital in Melbourne, spent 2 years there. He's now an ophthalmology registrar. So that's an incredibly competitive program to get onto. And the fact that we've done regional rural internship did not hold back. He reckons it helped him, don't know. But his intention is also to go back to Tamworth into that region and to take that service back there. That's one of the things that I do know, that the government is starting to put a lot of pressure on colleges to support rural pathways, but also to support rural clinicians. So the fact that if you are interested genuinely in sort of rural practice, there's definitely pressure coming from the government colleges to say get more people that are going to go out on that. And unlike ophthalmology, there was one at the Regis in Dullo, and I heard Mirage for years, he was actually ophthalmic pathway. The entire hospital knew that he was keen on ophthalmic. Any interesting eye case that came to the ED, Angus the Mirage was called, not because he was a Mirage, but because everyone knew he was keen on ophthalmic, and he was the only person in the hospital who was really good at operating an eye machine. So like, if he was in the hospital that day, his bosses knew he was keen, he was called, he was given relief from his duties for half an hour to go see an ophthalmic case in the ED. He saw every interesting eye case that came through the ED for an entire year.
Yeah, I guess going to procedural or aiming for procedural specialties like surgery, I was definitely able to use my opportunities as an advantage and to speak about in my interviews, because I did have a lot more than some of my metropolitan colleagues. So I have had been, primary operator under supervision for a number of cases that I was able to talk through in my interviews. It certainly didn't hold me back, rather in terms of I didn't have, and I'm still working towards making the research kind of aspect, but I do have a lot of procedural advantages and experience compared to my colleagues.
Any other questions? Might start one and just wrap up. Anyone? But Katie, I guess maybe for you, did you feel at any point that I would hear stories that as an intern or as a resident that you might be on your own, overnight looking after patients in some way that would terrify me? Did you feel at any point that you were a bit that you were unsupported, or put in situations that you sort of felt was inappropriate while you were there?
I think certainly towards the end of my internship residency was quite challenging because we were short-staffed. I think some of the COVID backlog from not having access to annual leave was really hard until people left. So that was a bit of a struggle. In terms of feeling like I was under pressure or stretched, I think from some of the admin tasks, like getting discharge summaries done, I think that's not a unique experience. Certainly I was encouraged to do things outside of my comfort zone. However, I always felt supported, and I have pretty much nearly all the consultants, not just in surgery, but in medical specialties, in ICU and in ED. Most of them have asked phone numbers directly, and many of them I have called directly on the weekend shift if the registrars were busy doing something else to ask for advice directly, or if I felt like I had a question about a procedure I was asked to do, or I felt confident times where, you know, urology, Reg was in theatre, I was a urologist, and she would come in directly to come and help me do a cats about if I felt like I was unsure about it, or if I got asked if I could do some procedure for a patient with chest drain, and the respiratory physician came in by called him and said, I'm not sure how to do this, and the page is easy. And because, you know, you can pretty much get anywhere in Orange in 10 minutes as well, they came in directly and taught me how to do it. And I guess learning those skills directly from the box was great. There were certainly times when I did feel challenged, but it was more from a staffing issue, but not from a support side of it.
Yeah, in general, anyone who's still under the impression that intention is going to be easy, sorry. We've got some bad news for you. But like the pressure overnight, the pressure on after hours, that's really a sort of lost places. So RPA is 3 interns and 2 registrars overnight. So a hospital of that size, like the still stretch, like each hospital is staffed according to its beds and its allocations, and that's not going to change regardless of whether you're rules and rule consultants names and their phone numbers. But yeah, it's difficult everywhere. I certainly haven't heard of any extra feelings of being stretched just because they're in the rule.
All right. Well, we might leave it there. Thanks very much. Actually, the last thing I'll say is if you're applying for any of our things that we've put up there tonight, put in your application that you think here. That's, you know, we're always trying to find people that are genuine. The fact that we've gone out of your way and come here tonight, if you're not led up ahead of everybody else. If you end up doing an interview for a bush first round cadetship or something like that, there's about 6 of us on the team, plus we have former cadets and board members and things that sit on the interview panel. So if you've done an outreach placement, the person that's in the team, that's just make sure you say it. All that sort of stuff is important when you're applying for things. So chuck all that in. If you're a member of Mirage, make sure you say that. Getting involved more with the Rural Health Club is a good way of pushing yourself forward towards opportunities rurally. So I'd encourage you to get involved as much as you can with Mirage.